Today in episode 56 of the podcast, we will be reviewing Flight Risk and Season 3, the final season of Marvel's What If. We'll also be giving the rundown of the biggest news of the week, including Ryan Gosling joining the director of Deadpool and Wolverine for a new Star Wars film. I'm Brad, he's Josh, and this is We'll Bring the Popcorn.
Before we jump into our news stories this week, please give us a like and subscription on YouTube. Hit that notification bell so you're getting all of our episodes when they drop every single Monday. If you're listening to us in the audio room, please give us a 5-star review. It does help elevate the profile of the show. And as always, go to willbringthepopcorn.com where you can get access to all of our archived episodes, as well as our social media platforms and our merch store so you continue to help supporting us in that way. We can't thank you enough for your continued support.
And so kicking off the news this week, we had something pretty big come across us that Ryan Gosling is in talks to lead up Shawn Levy's Star Wars film that's beginning to, looks like it's going to film in the fall, which is a good thing, but also a bad thing because it also might push Shawn off of doing his pop star band movie with Ryan Reynolds and Hugh Jackman. So I don't know if maybe he will either back out of that and someone else will direct, or if that'll postpone that film from happening for a little bit, because they just announced that a couple months ago, but it's because of Ryan Gosling showing interest in this, got Lucasfilm and Disney like, all right, let's get this going then. If we've got someone like Ryan Gosling coming into the Star Wars universe, let's get it going.
Yeah, that's a big deal. And Shawn and Hugh and Ryan can work together kind of whenever on this, but when Star Wars comes calling, you kind of got to jump at it if you're gonna direct one of these, and it's a passion project. Here's to take the helm, which Shawn Levy's been very open about the fact that he wants to do a Star Wars film as is. So now that this opportunity has really presented itself, and you're getting such an A-list actor like Ryan Gosling on board, you make it work whenever you can. Mm-hmm. You can take other passion projects and put them off to a later date if you can. So I get why they're potentially moving that film back. I don't know why they couldn't film it before then if there's no... I don't know if they have everything in line up to shoot it or not.
Yeah, I don't know if this is the one that Ryan is currently writing.
Maybe.
And so they don't really fully have the script complete yet, because there was a project between all three of them that Ryan was taking basically a year to work on, but that would have been filming later this year, so that might be the reason. It's just maybe they just don't have it done yet. And
sure.
We know Star Wars films, and especially big budget films like that, are going to take several months and quite a lot of time and effort to put into it, so it might just be that one's just not ready yet.
Yeah, and they could just push it towards a later date like we mentioned. But yeah, that's a big deal getting an A-lister like Ryan Gosling. There have been so many people that have made either cameo appearances in Star Wars movies. There's been some talk of people playing stormtroopers secretly in films that you don't hear about until after it comes out, or what have you. But to have somebody of Ryan Gosling's A-list status wanting to potentially be a lead in a film like this, you understand why that's getting a priority. But yeah, it's exciting getting him involved in that, and I'm curious to see what kind of story they come up with.
Yeah, Shawn's been working on it since 2022, so he's been developing it for a little bit now, and it is exciting if you got Ryan on board to be the lead. We'll see if maybe Ryan Reynolds and Hugh Jackman make a cameo at all, because like you said, we've had Daniel Craig and Tom Hardy, and you have so many big names who have done voices of stormtroopers or aliens or something else. Do we get them jumping in all right, let Hugh be a stormtrooper and Ryan Reynolds be an alien creature or something like that? And you'll probably have a few friend cameos like that pop up in it, but it's said to be an original story, something that they're coming up with that's not part of the main story. But there is a rumor that it could feature an older Rey in a mentor state. So we don't know if that's really going to be true or not, because we do have, which has been delayed now, the next Star Wars film with Rey is set 15 years after the last episodes were done. So to feature her in another one, because if they do start filming that this year, then she might be filming a older Rey, even older than the one she's playing 15 years on in Shawn's film, before she even does that film. So it's going to be interesting if that rumor is true or not, or if they try to stay away from the main canon stuff so they can do their own thing.
Yeah, and one thing I do like is it's kind of come out that it's supposed to be a standalone movie. It's not meant to be a new trilogy or anything like that. And I like these kind of individual pocket Star Wars stories that they tell. And it can be kind of loosely connected. We know, we talk about Andor and how much we like that, and how it's really kind of its own standalone thing that does eventually lead into Rogue One, so it's kind of connected there. I do like those standalone stories. Like I said, there's so much depth of stories you could tell in other parts of the galaxy that aren't necessarily like Skywalker related or related to, everything that you've seen so far. There's different stories that you could tell, and I'm excited to see them finally kind of going in that direction. Like you had the Skeleton Crew that we really
Let's say a Skeleton Crew was part of it, but it was a separate thing.
It's on its own thing, and I'm glad to see that they're kind of taking those risks and going. You can still always kind of come back and tell like a Rey story or a Skywalker story or what have you if you want to, but the fact that they're finally willing to really branch out and explore other parts of the galaxy and that it makes me happy because there's so much depth and incredible stories you could tell that they're finally starting to dive into, and I think for good measure on their part.
He's also got James Mangold has one in the works as well. I think his is supposed to be pre almost everything, so he can do his own thing, be standalone, and do whatever he wants with it, kind of the dawn and the birth of the Jedi with that. So it's going to be really interesting as they've got these big directors lined up to do these in the universe, but not directly Skywalker saga related, how they end up doing, because it could be really fun. I think Star Wars has been around since the 70s now, of course, and they do say it's a nostalgia series, so there is a part of them that want that you've got to reference and you've got to make sure it feels like Star Wars, but there's a lot of stuff that shows like, well, people are ready to kind of see something new and different in the Star Wars realm. Like I've mentioned it a few times now, I would love to see the aesthetics change to be more deeper into the samurai look. Like the buildings look more feudal Japan, and the armor and the lightsabers look more katana and look more samurai and all that. And like you could still have it be Star Wars, but give it that fresh look, and the common wipes and everything else they do. Like it's okay to change it up a little bit. So it's going to be interesting to see how much Shawn and James Mangold have to change things up when they do their films here.
Yeah, we've both been saying it for years. We want our Star Wars samurai movie. Like that would be incredible if they go back that far and go into that lore and just kind of play around in there and give us that Star Wars samurai film. That would be absolutely brilliant. I do want to move now into our second news story of the week. And we get word that we're finally getting the release of the reboot of the Toxic Avenger. Now, this movie was filmed a couple years ago. It starred Peter Dinklage as the Toxic Avenger, but in like screenings, it premiered at some festivals, and it was deemed like almost unreleasable because it was so graphic and it was so, over the top that nobody wanted to really touch it. But it seems like somebody's finally stepped up, and we're finally going to get to see this film and have it see the light of day.
Yeah, Cineverse has stepped in to distribute it. It'll be unrated, but it will get a wide release through theaters. So we've got an unrated version of it going wide. But yeah, I mean, you got Peter Dinklage as the Toxic Avenger. You also got Kevin Bacon and Elijah Wood in there. Yeah. You've seen some stills of Elijah Wood kind of looking like the Penguin in it. Mm-hmm. But I mean, it tested well through the screenings that it got. But yeah, it wrapped filming in 2021.
Yeah.
And it's just it got one premiere in 2023, and it's been sitting ever since because they couldn't find anyone to distribute. I wonder, and I would have to guess it's the Terrifier series that has really got people back on board to want to release it, because those are graphic, gory, very over the top, and they see that it's making a lot of money and doing well. And now Toxic Avenger, because it's always been a B horror film. Like it's been one of those underground hero villain crazy horror films. But you get Peter Dinklage involved as the main guy. That's a big name to be attached to the Toxic Avenger, and to have it sit for so long was kind of crazy. But I'm glad it's going to get a release this year.
Yeah, I felt the same way, because I was going to make the same comparison. You said if they could put Terrifier out in theaters, you've seen any of those films, crazy. The fact that those are getting wide releases is insane, given the amount of gore and violence that are in those. Kind of a shock horror type film as well. But I think with that success, to your point, I think somebody's more willing, like a Cineverse, to step up and be like, okay, we've seen that can work. Maybe if we throw this out there, we can make some money off this too. And it just goes to show that, while it may not be everybody's cup of tea, there's an audience for it. And it's kind of being shown to be the case. And you're like, okay, maybe we can take a little more risk and kind of push the envelope a little bit as far as filmmaking goes. And, things we're allowed to, put into theaters. Obviously, be very responsible if you have, younger kids that that show these types of films to, because it's just insane imagery. And I'm excited to see, when this film finally does get to see the light of day, I want to check it out and see what was so, off-putting about it that they maybe didn't want to see it. Like, I like it when films kind of push that envelope a little bit to a point. There's certain subjects that even I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
do we really need to like put that out there? But, they've shown no fear in doing it over the years, and I'm excited to see this film finally see the light of day.
It's interesting with it being an unrated cut. Are they just wanting to skip from having it being rated? Because you don't see very many unrated films being able to come to theaters. Normally they have to pass through the proper channels to get their rating to go in there and stuff. So, because you would think with how they've talked about it, it'd probably be NC-17, which most people think for adult content and not exactly for gore, but that can be for gore stuff as well. That goes past the R rating. But yeah, it'll be really interesting to see when this finally releases. We don't have even a month. It just says they're going to release it wide in theaters, unrated in 2025. So they're probably still trying to look at that window of where they could release, I would think, around Halloween if they can. But as we've talked about on here, we have so many horror movies. We've still got 3 or 4 coming up through February and March that we're going to be watching, that more horror films are released outside of the Halloween time than's released during it. So we'll see. We'll update either on our socials or another episode whenever we hear that gets a solid release date. But I'm looking forward to seeing it. I've seen a little bit of the old ones, but I haven't I don't think I've ever watched one fully. So this was hopefully be a good one to go into and just, all right, I know a little bit about it. I just want to go in and see what this one does.
You need to take the time and watch like the OG original Toxic Avenger film. It's pretty crazy. Like it has that cult-like status for a reason. Like you watch it and you're like, okay, I get it. I get why certain people are like obsessed with this movie. And it's going to be interesting to see when it finally comes out for sure.
And moving on to our next story. So Robert Eggers, you can go back in our archives and see what we thought of Nosferatu. Nosferatu. I'm going to say Nosferatu all the time. Like too much Fast and the Furious going on. Nosferatu. But he's got his next films. He actually got 2 films that he's got coming up. So the first one is Werwulf. So he's doing a werewolf. He's following up a vampire film with the werewolf film. He is doing it back in the 18th century or 13th century England. And as he does, if you don't really know how he's done his last few films, he wants it to feel authentic to the time period. So they already announced it's going to have dialogue that's fitting to the 13th century and the look and the feel and everything. And I'm excited for it because he did a fantastic job with Nosferatu, because I'm, again, Fast and the Furious. Got me too much with the Nos.
I love it.
But I really enjoyed that, so I'm really looking forward to see what he does with the werewolf, because, again, we just did Wolfman. Go back and see with that. A lot of people were mixed on, especially the look of the Wolfman, so maybe hearing Robert Eggers coming out, I think this is set for Christmas 2026, to see if he does a full-blown, hairy, full wolf, werewolf or not.
You got to figure it will be. He's so good about, being meticulous with detail and everything in his filmmaking, which I love. I love attention to detail like that. And I love that he's going to make it feel as authentic as possible, talk like how, it's at least been recorded that people talked. Obviously, nobody was around to see that unless you're like Keanu Reeves, who's a vampire. But, we don't, as authentic as possible. I love that. I love the direction that he's taking with that. It's going to be good. I have yet to see him make a bad film. And if he's taking that long to make it and take that time to make it properly, we're going to get something really good when it finally comes out. And it's been a long time since we've had a really, really good wolf movie. Mm-hmm. And I'm excited to see him finally get his hands on, something like this. And it's just going to be dark and brooding and, just very violent. And just, he did such a good job with Nosferatu that it really has me excited for what's to come with that one, because one thing about him is he's not cranking out movies left and right. He's taking his time and doing his due diligence, and that's what makes his movies so good, in my opinion, is he's willing to say, hey, I've got this movie that's not coming out for 2.5 years because I really want to take my time and make sure I get it right and really put thought into it and have that attention to detail. And I'm so looking forward to it.
He even spoke that he has no interest in doing modern films anymore, because if you watch The Witch, there's kind of a twist ending at the end, and he's like, I just thinking about doing cars or modern buildings or something like that. There's no interest to me at all. That's what he said about it. Like, sure. He has no interest in doing anything, which is great. Like, we need those period pieces. I love a good period piece. But the other film that he's doing was a little bit of a shock that he's attached to it, because he's doing a sequel to the cult classic Labyrinth.
Yeah.
That shocked me.
Yeah, I was surprised that he's getting his hands on that too, but obviously Labyrinth is another one of those cult classic films. David Bowie, like it's such a great film. I love that movie, and just surprised that you could have given me 20 directors that I thought would have directed a sequel to that, and I wouldn't have landed on Robert Eggers. But that has me very intrigued to see exactly what he's gonna do with that to kind of take that story forward. I'm excited to see him get his hands on it and see him kind of work his magic and see what's probably going to be a very different tone for his sequel.
I was going to say, like, the fantasy, I really want to see how he handles fantasy, but it's the tone is what I'm getting. Like, his last few films tonally is nowhere near what Labyrinth was. So it's like, how is this going to change? This is going to be more like Pan's Labyrinth and Labyrinth. Like, is it going to be a little darker and a little serious? Or is it going to be musical? Is it going to be funny over the top? Like, is he going to do something that surprises us here? Because I just didn't expect him to be doing a sequel to Labyrinth.
I cannot wrap my brain around the possibility of a Robert Eggers musical. I just can't. Personally,
he could do Sweeney Todd. If they wanted to do another Sweeney Todd, he could.
Yeah, I could
Sweeney
see
Todd.
that because of the Tim Burton-esque connection, I guess. But man, a Robert Eggers musical would be insane. I just don't like that. Just let him do the Phantom of the Opera. Why not?
Yeah.
I think he'd probably do okay with that. I love the Phantom of the Opera, but it's such a weird dynamic too. Like I can't see it.
It's got me intrigued though. Like, I'm gonna go see it because I've really enjoyed what he's been doing so far. But that wasn't one that I thought a space he would go into, with just how Labyrinth was done and the look and the feel and the tone of it just doesn't match what he's done. So because it's more bright and colorful and more little silly at times and stuff. So now you've kind of got him. I don't know if he does something silly, maybe he pulls it off well, but I'll be there to watch it.
Absolutely. We love Robert Eggers here on the show, and looking forward to what he has moving forward. I want to move into kind of an oddball story to kind of follow up on something we had talked about before. We had talked about Will Smith potentially teasing something about possibly going into the Matrix, kind of playing off the fact that he was in consideration for the role of Neo for the original Matrix movies. He wound up, I believe, turning it down.
For Wild Wild West.
Yeah, for Wild Wild West. And just great choice for him. He makes all kinds of great choices, apparently, especially lately. But, that had a lot of people talking about, what kind of Matrix-adjacent stuff is he working on? We threw some speculation out there, but it never really dawned on us, and I don't know why it didn't, considering one of the things he's most well-known for is music. But it appears he's going to be doing a collaboration song, or he has done a collaboration song with Big Shawn, and that was kind of the tease of them together with like this caption of Mr. Anderson and Mr. Smith, for a song called Beautiful Scars that they've done together. And it was just, I don't want to say it was a letdown, but it was kind of a little bit of a letdown. It's
definitely a bait and switch.
Yeah.
Like, you're expecting, he got a TV project or a film project or something where he's going to come into the Matrix. Maybe, there's been the long talked about Matrix 5, which doesn't have the Wachowskis directing. I think they're going to be producing, but you've got someone else stepping in the director's chair and writing the story. So like, all right, maybe they're trying to do a little reboot, or he's just going to come into it. But no, it's a song where he's dressed up as Neo. Like, he showed a picture, and it's like he's dressed up as Neo while Big Shawn is dressed up as Morpheus, and they use the Matrix font for the title song. But it was definitely a bait and switch. Like, how can we get the most interest possible? Well, let's say I'm going to do the Matrix. Oh, it's for a music video and a song probably. Like, okay.
Yeah.
That was kind of my reaction afterwards. Like, I was kind of looking forward to seeing him in the Matrix. Like, but is he just gonna do the bullet dodge as Neo, then just start getting jiggy with it?
I guess that's what he's gonna do. It was so disappointing, such a letdown. But I mean, it is what it is. If you like Will Smith's music, that's fine. Go check out the videos. Let us know what you think when you see it. But definitely felt like a little bit of a bait and switch there. Which, hey, clever marketing on your part. You got us talking about it. So I mean, it's just one of those things. Like, really, that's what it was for. Like, that sucks. But hey, good for him. It got people talking, and I guess he's grasping at straws lately, given his personal issues and stuff, to try to maybe get back into the good graces of people after what happened with the Oscars and everything that, kind of the fallout from that. But it was a little disappointing to see it was just for a song.
Well, we'll see if it's any good song, but we'll see what are they going to do for the music video. Are they going all out and making like a 10-minute Matrix music video with the song intertwined in between? That could be pretty fun because we used to have that kind of stuff in the past where they would do big videos or long music videos where you would have some acting and some other stuff in there. Let's see if we get something like that to maybe give fans a little bit more than just a music video.
Yeah, but Michael Jackson, he is not. And that's who typically would give us videos like that. But it'd be neat to see a little mini movie, so we'll keep our eyes out for it. But I think that's probably the last time we'll mention it here.
Yeah. So moving on to another story, it's kind of interesting that they announce this. So you have Zach Cregger, who was the director of Barbarian, which that's a horror movie I heard a lot about. I haven't checked it out yet. I'm really behind on a lot of my horror films and stuff. But he is stepping in and writing and directing a brand new Resident Evil movie. So we know we had the long series with Mila Jovovich that, was kind of hit or miss on how people, because it went a little more action campy than horror. You didn't really get the horror aspects, but he is apparently going full horror, wanting to pay more respect to the original games in the series of the mood and the horror aspects of it. But the studios are so excited about it. You've got like 4 different ones are fighting over who gets the rights to it to put it out.
I love that though, because at its core, Resident Evil are one of the OG, like super popular horror games that really blew up that genre in the video game world. The games are incredible. They're up to 8 of them now. So many lore that you could pull from so many different pieces if you wanted to make proper movies out of it. But the fact that he's making it a horror focused film has me very excited about the possibilities for this, because there's so many good stories in those games that I think would adapt really well into a movie that I think, given the right director, in this case, it feels like they could, because I really do enjoy Barbarian. Barbarian was a good horror movie, and seeing him take Resident Evil like this and possibly taking it to new heights in the film world, I'm very excited about that possibility, because at its core, Resident Evil is like the standard bearer for horror gaming. And I'd love to see him take a real hard stance and give us a really frightening horror film out of it, because there's so many cool creatures and stories and things that they could dive into with viruses and stuff like that they could really, if they really wanted to, make something really special with it.
I still remember it was me and my brother playing it as kids. And the first one, I believe it was the first one, came out, that walking down the hallway and the dogs jumped through the glass. And I'm like, okay, what had happened here? Because you had those locked camera angles that gave you those really, like, you'd hear the sounds, but you can't really look around and see. And then you come around and you get the cutscene of the zombie eating somebody, or, something like that it set really good atmosphere and stuff. So, yeah, if he goes back to, because, Mila's, it did touch on a good amount of the games, but it did a lot of its own stuff. Like, it didn't really dive into the games that deep. Curious if he goes back all the way back to the mansion in the first one and gives us more of that, or if something like Resident Evil 4, that's, talked about as being one of the greatest Resident Evil games ever done. It is set in a different setting, back in kind of a rundown village and stuff, and you get a little more horror aspects in that. Like, it had a lot of good jump scare stuff. Does he adapt kind of Resident Evil 4 and give us something like that to go back into the Resident Evil world, but not exactly retreading what those other films did? Because, like I said, it just got a remaster, which again got like almost perfect tints from everybody, because it was a perfect game back then. Even the remaster, they kept it to the point of like it was a near perfect game. So I would love to see like Resident Evil 4, but even if you went to the more modern ones, like 7 really gave it a fresh take of being inside of that house and all the creepiness of the videos, and going through and seeing, kind of looking at the past and looking at that creepiness of going around the house. Like, there's a lot they could do with the Resident Evil games, depending on how focused they want to be on an individual game, or just taking, maybe 1 and 2 and combining them something, but it'd be a little harder. But going harder into the horror and the dark and the suspense is really going to help this series.
Yeah, and it, like I said, it does lend itself so well into film. And like I said, he's a brilliant director. I'm excited to see him get his hands on it, really tell this amazing story that, hopefully will, continue on the legacy of Resident Evil in a way that, they're more willing to tell stories in this universe, because you could really dive into and make several movies out of this. Like, they really could if they wanted to just excited to see if he just makes like one standalone that takes elements of everything and kind of combines it into one. Because there's a lot of cool set pieces you could do for that. Like you said, the mansion, the old village. There's so many other places that they go that you could really make a really quality film out of it. I'm excited to see what he does with it.
Even like going around Raccoon City a little bit better than they did with that, but it does sound like he's focusing more on the original. So we'll see exactly what that means. That could be 1. Maybe he starts with 2. Maybe he starts with 3. Maybe he just starts at 4, and we kind of get flashbacks and lore and other stuff from that. But I'm excited for it. Like it's Resident Evil plus horror. That's what it was missing. It was missing more of the horror. It was more campy, over the top action, which they could be fun. But it needed that horror. It needed that scares and the jump scares and the tension and stuff to really make it a solid film.
Absolutely. And I'm excited to see, that when it finally sees the light of day. Now, I want to move into our last bit of news for the week. We did get our Oscar nominations this past week. And, there was some surprise snubs in there for sure. But I did want to kind of throw out a little bit of early congratulations for a couple of our favorite movies. One, Timothée Chalamet being nominated for Best Actor for A Complete Unknown. Brilliant performance by him in this, but also Wicked getting Best Picture nomination, which is a little bit of a surprise, honestly. As much as we loved it, I didn't know if it was going to make that final cut, but now that they're nominating like 9 or 10 films as opposed to like 4 or 5 like they used to do, the opportunity was a little bit more present for them to get that nomination. But you also get nominations for Cynthia Erivo as Elphaba and Ariana Grande as Best Supporting Actress for Glinda, however she wants you to say her name, like she did in the movies. Love that. But super happy for Wicked, more than deserving. Dune Part 2, another one of our favorite films, was nominated for Best Picture. But I want to kind of kick off some of the snubs a little bit to talk about some of the people that didn't get nominated. 2 of the Best Picture nominations didn't get directors nominations for directing. Like, it's crazy that doesn't correlate between the two, because Denis did not get nominated for Dune Part 2 and John Chu didn't get nominated for Wicked, which is very surprising.
And what makes it even crazier is Denis didn't even get nominated for Dune Part 1 either.
Right.
So both films that I believe both of them were up for Movie of the Year, Picture of the Year, he didn't get Best Director for either of them. Those were gorgeous, well-directed, well-done films, and he didn't get another. It's just crazy to me that he didn't get it. Like, one that was a surprise to some people that James Mangold got nominated for A Complete Unknown, which it was a great film, and I thought it was really well done and everything too, but it is kind of like him over Denis with just what Dune Part 2 took to get in there was kind of crazy. I also wanted to see Robert Eggers get some love for Nosferatu, because I thought that was such a very well done, well filmed, good looking film that I think he should have got a nod for that.
I agree. And there's, some surprise that Denzel didn't get his nomination like he usually does when he appears in it. He was honestly the bright spot in Gladiator Part 2 for me. You also didn't get kind of a surprise that as much as she was getting buzz around the Golden Globes, that Pamela Anderson for her role in Showgirl didn't get a Best Actress nomination, as well as Jamie Lee Curtis didn't get nominated as well. Some surprising no nominations, some snubs for sure. It kind of feels early on, based on initial chatter, that Amelia Perez, like it did the Golden Globes, is going to kind of clean up at the Academy Awards, which I've still yet to see the movie.
Yeah, I need to see it.
It's one that's got a lot of buzz, and a lot of buzz for both positive and negative around it.
I've heard more negative around it than I have positive.
Sure.
But it's also the internet and stuff. But I want to see it just because it's so polarizing. Like, you either loved it or you absolutely loathe it.
Yeah, which is very interesting to see that a movie that has that kind of, that kind of talk about it being the one that's going to be the front runner to win all of these major awards. And it's just, I don't know if it's just the people in Hollywood kind of taking a stand behind it or what. Like, I don't know. Like, you don't want to get things, I don't want to make things political, but there's some political infighting, I'm sure, that's going to kind of cause some things to go the way they go. Hopefully not. But a lot of the people that were nominated were very, very deserving. And congratulations to everyone who was nominated. Obviously, the people that are snubbed, there'll be more opportunities for them to get in. There was a couple other notable snubs that I don't remember off the top of my head, but congrats again to everyone who was nominated.
And we also had a little bit of controversy that came out around it, because we had a few kind of talking, not with their name being known, saying that, they don't actually watch everything that they're supposed to watch. The ones who are doing the voting for the winners for the Academy Awards and stuff, they're like,
Crazy.
I just don't have time to watch everything. So their vote basically comes down to which one has their friends in it. So it just kind of shows that, all right, so are we actually going off of good merits, or we just got voters now and the winners are just because they're friends of theirs? Like, it really hurts I think the Oscars and all the Academy Awards here when you have multiple, because you have people who say they worked for, Oscar voters and stuff saying that as well. Like, yeah, they would just vote for whichever film or property had their friends in it, and they wouldn't even watch everything in there. And it's like, that's kind of wild and crazy that you're voting just based on your friends. Like, it shouldn't be that way. It should be whatever's the best. So now it goes in, all right, which of these nominees are in there just because, well, the foreign press, like, well, we got some friends in these films. Let's give them the nods over top of people who actually deserve it. Like, it creates a really weird situation around it now that you've got that kind of information that came out that you thought it happened some, but it feels like a lot of it is happening.
Yeah, it definitely causes it to lose a little bit of its luster, right? Because it was considered at one point like the most prestigious thing you could win is an Oscar if you're in the filmmaking. And to that point, a lot of the case, it's still true. But to see some of that, kind of just nonchalance about it, like the fact that you don't even watch the films is crazy if you're going to be voting on it. Like, that's insane to me. Give us a vote. Like, we'll watch.
We'll watch every single one of them.
Every freaking movie there is. Like, I can't believe that that was even a thing, and it kind of just really irks me that, like, okay, that just goes to show that it's not really based on what people think is the best performance. That's not to say that everybody that has a vote doesn't pay attention to these films and watches, but the fact that you have people that are just openly willing to talk about the fact that they don't watch everything it's coming out, I don't think those people should be voting on the winners anymore. I really don't, because, like, that's not fair to the people that pour their heart and souls in these movies. And I remember one that didn't get a nomination that I'm genuinely shocked didn't, and that was Florence Pugh in We Live in Time.
She was a brilliant performance.
Fantastic performance. The fact that she wasn't nominated is crazy to me. But I mean, it at the end of the day, it's people's opinions. It's an award show. Like, it's a big deal because it's been such a big deal for a long time that we kind of wanted to take a few minutes to talk about it. But at the end of the day, like, if they're just going to nonchalantly vote for people that, they're friends with to get these awards, like, what's the point in caring about the awards at this point? You know what I mean? And that's unfortunate, but if it's going to lose a lot of that luster, it's terrible,
Yeah, it was difficult seeing that because it started with one and several more have come out about it. Like, if you're going to do it right, you got to watch everything. You got to find that time. And, we know in Hollywood they can be extremely busy, but if you have gotten yourself into being a voter, you've got to be able to find that time to be able to watch and go over these performances and vote based on the merit and not just because you're your best buddy. Like, it just... we don't just know how many of them are doing that and how it skews the votes, because I don't want to put down anybody who's won anything in the last few years, but it's going to affect and adjust, like, who's actually winning, because if they went off of something, maybe someone else would have won if they would have voted for, who they really thought was the best performance, but they gave it to their friend who didn't win. But their votes could have gone to someone else that could have gotten the vote that
could have been the difference.
A lot of people thought, well, how did they win over them? That's probably the reason why.
Yeah, and it kind of shines a little bit of a light on that, and now we can kind of just take it for what it is at this point, unfortunately.
So yeah, we'll leave that there for now. We'll head over into our film review of the week with Flight Risk. So this is, even though the trailers didn't show, this is a Mel Gibson directed film, so think of what you want based on that. But this was something that we're probably going to talk openly about everything, and it's going to be filled with spoilers. If you don't want to be spoiled, just go in the description into the timestamps of when we do our wrap-up of the film. That'll give our mostly spoiler-free take on how this film was, but we've got to talk about some of the ridiculous things that happened in this film to really be able to talk about it right, because the story isn't that deep. I mean, it's about a U.S. Marshal who is tracking down Topher Grace's character, which is Winston. He's hiding out in Alaska, and she gets him. they agree for him to testify against somebody, which you don't get any depth to who that person is or why they're testifying, but she needs to fly him from Alaska back to New York to testify. Most of the movie takes place in the airplane and stuff, but I don't even know where to begin or to talk about this film because it was absolutely ridiculous, not in a good way.
I don't know about you, but I absolutely loved it.
Okay, that's it. That's all we got.
I'm just kidding. This film was, for lack of a better term, hot garbage. Like, this movie is not good. It is not good at all. And the plot of the film is very straightforward, which is fine. It's fine in a film, but the dialogue in this honestly felt to me like somebody said, write me a script in ChatGPT about this with the following 3 prompts. Guy agrees to flip on a mob boss in a trial. You have Mark Wahlberg in a very funny prosthetic balding cap that he had to wear for this movie.
Which is very obvious because you can see all the wrinkles on his forehead, and then the top of his head is just flat.
Yeah, it's terrible. The aesthetics on it were absolutely terrible. And, it all takes place in a flight between, Alaska, like a remote part of Alaska to Anchorage so they could board a plane to New York. And then ChatGPT wrote an entire script about dialogue and everything like that.
It does feel AI.
Was terrible in this film. Not good at all. There's a portion of the film where, the U.S. Marshal, who's played by Michelle Dockery in this film, it winds up subduing Mark Wahlberg's character, if you've seen the trailer, Mark Wahlberg is not just some, podunk Alaskan charter plane pilot who he winds up being somebody who was hired by the mob boss to keep Topher Grace's character from making it to the plane to, testify against him because reasons, I guess. They don't exactly go into too much detail about what the guy did, or it's just, I guess they're trying to bust him on racketeering or something. I don't know. It's just, you kind of draw your own conclusions, which it does a terrible job about laying that out.
Yeah, because Winston's his accountant. That's all you know. You know the name of the guy, but you know nothing else about him. What is he involved in? What business is he doing? What kind of stuff are they looking at? You get no depth information. Like, it does feel like it was written by AI.
Yeah, and it just... It's a shame because I do like Topher Grace. I love Mark Wahlberg. Like, I like all this. I like a lot of the stuff that they've done, and this just felt like it was filmed in like 2 days. It really does because of the way it was shot, the way it was written. Like I said, the dialogue is absolutely atrocious in this film. Not very believable. There's a point where, she winds up subduing Mark Wahlberg because they finally figure out who he is in a very just absurd way of getting the marshal's attention after Topher Grace is the one who initially finds out that he's not the actual pilot of the plane. She finally winds up subduing him, and then she's trying to figure out how to fly the plane, and they have this guy, come on the radio with her to kind of talk her through it, and it is the cheesiest, most ridiculous back and forth dialogue. Like, you're in a situation where there's a girl trying to figure out how to fly a plane that was trying to be taken hostage, and she has no flight experience. And the first thing this guy does when he comes on the radio, I guess as a way to calm her down, is to try to hit on her.
Yeah, we'll get you here so we can go on a date. So what kind of food do you want? All right, this is how you do the flaps. Like, all right, so I think you're going to really like how I look. Like, it's just that kind of stuff.
That's the dialogue in this movie, and it just hurt my brain to sit there and watch. We spent more time in this movie laughing than we did, like taking anything that happened in this film seriously.
And it's considered a drama thriller and not a comedy.
And we were laughing the entire time at how cheesy and terrible these lines were in this movie, and it's just not well delivered at all. It's just kind of a big floppy mess is the best way I could choose to describe this film.
Yeah, and take what you will. Mel Gibson has said and done a lot of bad crap outside of it. If you look at his films, he's done a lot of great films, but this is one of
not one of them.
Yeah, and it's like, was there any research done on anything? Because you have a U.S. Marshal who said when they finally figure out that Mark Wahlberg is a bad guy and she goes to subdue him. Of course, he stops her from using her gun and he gets a knife, but she's able to knock the knife away. They literally knock the knife out of a hand and it flies back and hits Topher Grace in the face. Straight up and down, a knife bounces off of his face underneath the pilot's chair. And it's like, Wait, what?
Oh, it was bad. I completely forgot about that part of the movie too, and it's just so terrible.
But again, she's a U.S. Marshal, so they finally get him subdued, and he's knocked out in the back, and she looks for 2 seconds, like, oh, where's the knife at? Okay, let's just forget about it for the rest of the flight. Like, I'm a U.S. Marshal who even go back to when the plane, like, they board the plane first. So she gets Topher Grace's character on Winston. She gets in, the co-pilot seat and stuff. And Mark Wahlberg gets on there. You sure you don't want to sit in the back? There's one seat in the back.
Yeah.
And he asked her multiple times, you sure you don't want to sit in the back? There's one seat in the back.
Yeah.
But, like, wouldn't she have, if she's got this big witness that she's supposed to be protecting, double-checked ID and made sure that this person, because the person that you see who was the pilot, they look nothing alike at all whatsoever. So if she would have checked ID, which he had the guy's ID in his pocket, she would have seen that it's not the right pilot, and the movie would have been over with already. But, like, she did nothing. Like, this looked horrible for the U.S. Marshal character, because you're supposed to feel a little sympathetic to her because it brings up that she had a case in the past where she's supposed to be protecting somebody, but they ended up catching on fire from a Molotov cocktail, and she wasn't able to save her. And you're supposed to feel a little sympathetic, but everything she does in the movie makes no sense for what someone who has had extensive training, because we've learned she's been 7-8 years, wouldn't have done all this stuff, leaving a knife behind, not fully securing, not looking back and checking on the prisoner that often, because he's sitting there sawing at stuff and breaking stuff off and and she's never looking back at him. She's just, okay, I guess I've got him fine.
Yeah, I've got him tied up. He couldn't possibly escape. Like, it's so absurd and so dumb and so insulting to our intelligence as viewers. Like, there's nothing about it that makes sense. Like you said, the fact that she didn't properly vet that the pilot was... How did she not have background on who the pilot was going to be to fly the plane?
Normally you'd have a rundown about this is pilot, this is what he looks like,
she knew his name. Like, she didn't see a picture. There's no dossier for her to look at. There's no photo of what he... Like, you don't have a photo of the pilot that you can reference to make sure that the guy that gets on the frickin' plane is not the guy in the picture. Mm-hmm. What are we doing here? Like, it's like I said, it's just insulting to anybody who watches any of these types of films or has half a brain. Like, it's terrible. It's just... There's so many things wrong with this movie that had they taken 5 seconds to not be lazy about the writing, could have figured this out. And it's just the fact that this made it all the way through like it did, and it's just completely absurd. And that's not even to get to I'm gonna jump around a little bit just because it's such a hot mess. Like, even when they get to the end where she's trying to land the plane, and the guy, like, she runs out of fuel as she's trying to land the plane, and she's almost to the ground, and the guy that was helping her the entire time was telling her nothing about what to do.
Okay, I'll see you. You got it from here.
Nothing about a break. Like, you haven't got wheels on the ground. He's like, all right, you're fine. We'll talk. And the plane luckily doesn't completely blow apart because it's out of fuel. But, like, what the heck? You abandoned it at the most critical point. Like, the plane's not even on the ground.
She's 60, 100 feet in the air still. And he's like, not telling her this is how you brake. This, you need to pull the nose up so you bring it down properly. You gotta adjust the flaps once. But it was also sequences like that, like he's walking her through. Even when he's walking her through stuff, it's like, all right, you need to, let's bring the speed up some more. So you need to, and she automatically moves like 3 levers before he's even done talking. He's like, it's you don't know how to fly a plane,
right?
So why are you flipping all these levers before he's even done talking? But yeah, that was the whole thing with him. Like, I get kind of what they were trying to do, that he's trying to make her feel a little more comfortable. But yeah, he abandons her before she's even on the ground. He's like, all right, I'll see you in a little bit. And her face, it was like all of our faces, like, wait, what? Like, she's never landed a plane before. It's maybe a small plane, but you gave her no, ridiculous. Like, what does she need to do to make sure she lands properly? And even the whole stuff with the plane, like, they have external shots that look good, like they filmed up actual plane out flying. There's other times, even like the beginning with the cabin in Alaska, looks like AI was used, and you could tell green screens and stuff are inside, especially how it moves. Like, there's some really bad turbulence that look like, okay, we can tell you're in this little bitty box that's just shaking and stuff. There's a whole sequence that me and you looked at each other with after they knocked Mark out and they got him in the back of the rally, saying, oh, we're in a nosedive and we've got to pull it up and stuff. But when you look at the plane, at one part that they show you, it's basically almost flipped over on its top.
Yeah.
And they're a couple 100 feet off the ground, but she's able to pull the nose goes up, and even though that wasn't ridiculous enough, like if it's insulting your intelligence, even if you're not a pilot, you look at, well, if a plane's upside down and you're that close to the ground, it's probably not going to make it. Well, she's able to pull it up, but they're in the mountains of Alaska and around Alaska and stuff, and they crash through snow on the top of a mountain. But this isn't just gliding over the top of snow. This is looking
fully
like
engulfed.
10-foot high, 30-foot long mound of snow that the plane goes through and continues flying.
Like nothing's wrong.
That's 2 instances where it should have crashed. But it just went right through this large mound of snow like nothing ever happened. Like, because it's one single front propeller that led it through the snow, but it continued flying after. Like it's full of that kind of stuff that was just absolutely ridiculous, over the top. Nothing made sense. And then you add in like a little mystery of like, all right, well, there's a mole inside of the U.S. Marshals and the government here, and I think it's my boss, so I'm going to tell someone else about it without even vetting or figuring anything out. But it ends up like there really is no twist. Everything is so just out there. Like, all right, it's going to be this guy because we know it so well.
Well, no, there's a twist, because she thinks at first that it's her friend in the this is where it gets ridiculous again. She thinks it's her friend that she's been talking to kind of get through this situation. She thinks it's her friend that's done it. So she calls her boss. It's like, hey, I think my friend is a mole. And the boss is like, oh, interesting. I'm going to look into that.
Yep, call you back 5 minutes later. Then, oh, she died in a car accident.
Yeah, it's crazy how that happened. Well, they figure it out before they even get to that point, because like they have a conversation about like paying this informant. Like they're like, Topher Grace's like, oh yeah, we paid this person like 20. I don't know who it was, but it was like something to this account where the director happened to be on vacation, and it was just like, oh, it's the director. It's
maybe he could have told me that earlier.
There was a twist. It was so stupid. Like like I said, this it hurt my brain to sit there and like just try to make sense of this movie, and it's unfortunate because there are talented people involved in this film, but it's just at every beck and call in this film, like it just. Everywhere you look, it's just insulting to your intelligence. Like, it's just, it makes no sense. Like I said, this felt very Chat GPT making a script about what we got with a few prompts, and just, they were like, okay, that sounds good. Let's go with it. This seems feasible. Like, it just didn't seem like very well thought or very well properly vetted to give us anything resembling a coherent story in this. Like you said, the very basis of the plot is fine. It's the premise of it I can get behind, where it's like, okay, this informant is trying to make it to another plane to go to New York to testify against this mob boss that he's trying to turn against, and come to find out that the pilot's been killed. And like I understand all that. Like
there's no depth.
The execution was god awful in this movie. There was nothing about it was realistic at all. This isn't even a turn your brain off and enjoy it type film, which plenty of those that I enjoy.
We can do bad movies if you can turn your movie off, turn your brain off, and just watch it. It can be fun. There was no real fun to have here other than laughing at it directly. Like, you're not laughing with the movie, you're laughing at it.
Yeah, and Mark Wahlberg, like, we haven't even really touched on him too much in this. The dialogue that he was given in this movie was just god awful. Like, he's this, you come to find out he's this guy that was hired by the crime family to make sure that Topher Grace doesn't make it there. He's based on what we could piece together from what he talked in the movie, he was recently released from prison for something, and he's just this cold-blooded killer, like, but the way he talks to the marshal is like just crass and wrong. But I don't know, it's just it was just a hot mess.
His motivations made no sense, because if he was hired to make sure they don't make it there, he could have easily offed them. Like, they're sitting in the plane before he gets in there with their backs turned. She's not looking for anything. She's just sitting there twiddling the thumbs, waiting for it to happen. He could have popped them and flew off, dumped their bodies out in the mountains, and went on his business. But it added like a subplot that he wants to torture him, that he likes to torture. So he wants to take him somewhere and, cut him to pieces and torture him up and stuff, which really had no bearing on the film. It didn't matter. None of that mattered. None of it mattered. He could have really easily taken these people out and flown off and got his money and been done. But because he has this sadistic want to like torture people, he didn't do anything, and it made no sense. And there was even some unnecessary gore towards the end with him. I won't fully give away that because I don't really want to talk about what happened because it was nasty. It was really unnecessary that he did that, and then when we finally, there's a point where, again, we talk about how the U.S. Marshal, she's flying the plane now and trying to, and she never looks back at him. So of course he escapes multiple times to attack them and ends up injuring Topher Grace's character to where we don't know if this is fatal or anything else. So she's like really trying to get him on the ground. She can't detour, can't do anything else because, he might die and she wants to keep him alive and stuff. And so they finally crash into the ground, but Mark Wahlberg's character is thrown from the plane, and you have paramedics that come in to the plane to check on him. And she looks back at the paramedic and says, "What about, there was another guy on the plane here that fell out. Like, do you know what happened to him?" And the paramedic just goes, "Oh, he didn't make it. Oh, thank God." Or something like that.
Yeah.
Like she was just, and the paramedic looks back like, okay, like someone just died. Yeah. And that wasn't even the most ridiculous part of that, because we finally get to see the person, the pilot who was on the phone, come out to greet her because he's ready for his date. Like, she's hurt and bleeding. Topher Grace's Winston is hurt and bleeding, might be dying. But as her witness, she should be more concerned about him and getting into the ambulance with him and following her witness. But he comes out of the car and he's like, "Oh yeah, you're down." What are we doing? He's dancing at a crime scene of a plane crash where someone has died, another person is close to death, and he's dancing as he comes out of the car.
It's so stupid.
It's ridiculous.
I cannot express enough how much I dislike this movie. And it's just insulting at every turn. Not to mention the fact that you get Mark Wahlberg flung from a plane and it doesn't kill him. Like, you're on a plane, you're being flung from a plane that's crashing and you're not instantly killed when you hit the ground. Like, you have to go through another absurd method to kill him. I'll just spoil it. He gets hit by one of the freaking ambulances on the tarmac.
Who are following the plane way too closely.
Yeah, way too close to the plane. And like he gets hit by an ambulance after he lands on the ground. He gets up and he's like, "How did he survive?" Splat, and you're done. And you're just like, "Okay, thank God." Like,
but the movie didn't even end there.
Yeah, that
like you get another twist because she was a bad U.S. Marshal. She didn't go along with her prisoner that's getting loaded in an ambulance to make sure he's protected. Because someone just tried to kill both of you. You think, "Oh, okay, we're fine now." Well, no, because one of the paramedics is another bad guy who's going to kill him. So they open. She sees him and she's suspicious about him, but she doesn't move. She doesn't go after him. She just waits, and then all of a sudden she waits till the doors close and it's starting to go away. Then she opens up and sees that he's trying to suffocate him with a plastic bag, and then she finally they didn't do any research on anything of what like someone in that situation would be doing. She's just standing outside the plane looking around, seeing him dance, seeing someone else sneak in. It's like,
the way she acted in this movie, I understand why she was benched. Negligence.
It was horrible. Yeah, you were supposed to feel sympathetic to her. No, like, she should be fired.
She was bad
from
at
her job.
She was bad at her job. Okay, I get the understanding of like the accident happened, you lost a witness, you were benched, and for reasons, I guess, you're back in the field for this one because I guess nobody else wanted to do this job. So like, hey, let's give her another shot. It's just so dumb. She's so like it was such an incompetently written character, and it's just. I can't stress enough how much I dislike this movie. Like it just really bothered me that they put absolutely no thought. The best part about this movie is the fact that it's only 90 minutes.
Oh,
the fact that it's only 90 minutes. It's a very short movie. Like the fact that it ended is great, but it's a short movie. So I mean, even if you're considering watching this, it is a very short watch.
But it felt very long.
Yeah, please watch this movie and just come talk about this film with us because. My God, it is Madam Web-esque levels of lack of attention to detail and lack of thought behind so many things.
I'm going to say Madam Web was a better film than Flight Risk was.
I would agree. And
that's not saying much.
That's crazy to say. But like this is honestly one of the worst movies I've seen in a while. Like it's just not good.
Yeah, so in the end, Flight Risk was just terrible. It had bad dialogue. It had bad visuals. Nothing made sense. It felt like it was questioning your intelligence the whole time of like, none of this is plausible. Nothing of this should be happening. It felt like there was no research done on anything, that it was written by AI. Like, it was just an absolute utter mess from beginning to end. It was only funny because you were laughing at how ridiculous it was, that none of it made sense. I'm giving Flight Risk a 1. Like, I can't bring myself to bring it any more than that. Like, it was just one of the worst movies I've seen in a very long time.
And I would agree. This film is absolute hot garbage. It is not a film I'd ever want to see ever again in my life. But if you want to see it once, have a good laugh and talk about how absurdly this movie was written. There's a complete lack of direction in this film. Nothing is reasonable. Nothing of it, if you put any modicum of thought into this film, makes any sense at all. For that reason, I'm giving it a 1 as well, only because I don't believe in giving anything a 0. It's a film that was made. I'll give it a 1. Like, it is just not good. One of the worst films I've seen genuinely in a long time. And it's such a shame because I do love Mark Wahlberg as an actor. I do love Topher Grace as an actor as well. But both were given just a mound of crap to deal with in this. And they did what they could, but at the end, it's just not a good movie at all.
Yeah. I don't know Michelle Dockery that much of what else she's been in. She, like, again, I don't think any of the actors were that bad. It was they were giving so much bad stuff to work with. Like, bad direction, bad dialogue, bad everything. That I don't even think if you had Oscar-winning actors in there, they could have pulled anything out of this, because it was just that bad. But Flight Risk is in theaters now. If you want to go check it out and see if it is bad as we all think it is. And if you do go see it, come to our socials, come to our Discord, talk to us about it. We'll love to rag on this a little bit more. Like, we don't want to be that harsh on something, but this kind of deserves it because it is that bad. It just feels like no effort was really put into this film.
And when it warrants it, we'll be critical. I know some people like to give me a little bit of a hard time. It's like, oh, you're too nice when it comes to some films. No, I will rip a movie apart when I genuinely feel it deserves it, and this one absolutely deserves it. I am so ready to go have a palate cleanser to move into talking about our TV review of the week, which I'm getting ready to do. But to kind of put a button on this movie, like, I know sometimes we get poked at for like being a little too generous with our ratings sometimes, but we are more than willing to rip a movie apart if we feel it deserves it. This film is absolutely deserving of that. And thank God we can transition to something that's a bit more of a palate cleanser and talk about something much more pleasant. And that's going to give us our TV review of the week. And that is the final season of Disney's Marvel's What If from Disney, season 3. This is the final season of What If. And to kind of give like an overall sense of this season, I feel bad that I feel like in this season they finally really, really hit their stride with some of the stories they tell, especially the last couple episodes in this season. I felt were absolutely brilliant. The last episode in particular is fantastic to kind of tie everything together in. What you don't know if you've never watched What If is they take, characters that you already know and tell different stories about what could possibly happen if certain events were different based on what you know of the MCU in what they've presented so far. So you get characters you're already familiar with and a couple characters that haven't really been introduced in the modern MCU, like Howard the Duck is involved. You get a couple characters that they've introduced in this series, but I really feel like they've hit their stride, and it's a shame that they wrapped it up because they kind of end this thing on a high. I think they really found their calling in this, and I love that you get these individual stories that kind of play a bigger part in an overall story that they're telling, which I think is a lot of fun. And you get these crazy hypothetical situations about characters you already know, and it makes for a lot of fun stories. And I really enjoyed this final season. Like I said, I'm disappointed that it's ending because I really feel like they found their voice this season with all the stories they were telling and the way they all connected together.
I enjoyed most episodes. There was some that stood out as just not being as good as solid, just strange and weird. And I have to say the Howard the Duck episode was one because you get Darcy, from Thor and everything, and Howard the Duck end up dating and having a baby, but they have an egg. But the entire universe is after this egg because they think it's like the supreme being is going to be born and all this. And so you've got this kind of just absurd over the top. You visit Loki, who, I guess never went to Asgard. He's still with the Frost Giants and everything, but he's opened up a ski resort that they go to there. But you get like every villain of Thor's, and you even get Thanos and everybody else showing up, and you have the egg hatch. And this is spoilery to it, but this has been over for a few weeks now, so we're going to touch a little bit on the spoilers with it. But the egg opens up and it's able to destroy Thanos and like every villain and stuff. But we get that Birdie, and it's what they end up naming the child, is supposed to be this big cosmic power, but they never really capitalized that on the last, even though she was a kind of a fun part of the last few episodes. It kind of forget about that part of with the crazy Howard the Duck story, that she's supposed to be this powerful, but she ends up being kind of just a pilot in the end. Like it kind of forgets a little bit about that. And I will say the Agatha one I wasn't as crazy about. Like it was fun, but it was just this big, it's Agatha goes to Hollywood and you think she's going to be an actress and stuff, but she's actually trying to awaken the Celestial so she can get its power and stuff. And you get Kingo from the Eternals shows up to it, but they have a dance battle off and stuff. And it was, I don't know, it was just really weird. The animation was really weird. You could tell all of the backup dancers were synced to their movements. So they were all doing the exact same movements at the exact same time in the exact same way. And it kind of threw me off. Like it had a couple rougher episodes to me, while that didn't really feel like it fit in the overall story. Because we've had some that are out there that aren't really supposed to fit. But when it's a final season and you're trying to wrap up this interconnected story, those kind of stuck out as like, well, you set up a character that happens in your big payoff episodes, but then you didn't really pay off that character at all.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, it's not perfect by any stretch, but the story, a lot of the stories they tell are a lot of fun. I really enjoyed the Shang-Chi episode, the Western type episode. That was a lot of fun. You get Walton Goggins coming back with his character, and it's just a ton of fun. I enjoyed the Mysterio episode as well. Like that was a good one. The Mecha Hulk, the Hulk versus the Mecha Avengers.
Those were fun because it was like Godzilla meets Power Rangers meets Marvel meets Voltron. Like, because you get their mechs transform and combine together, and you get Hulk kind of looking like Godzilla, and that was a fun episode.
Yeah, like they just tell some of these silly stories that are obviously not plausible in film, but they work in the TV animated realm, and it's just so much fun. And I enjoy like even the watcher kind of becoming more emotionally connected to these characters, and you see that kind of play off with the last couple episodes where the rest of his fellow watchers kind of notice that he's breaking protocol by intervening and not just sitting back and letting things happen. And you get this incredible sequence in the last episode where there's this big fight between Captain Carter and her crew trying to save the Watcher, who, these guys have been part of every, the big interconnected story throughout all of this. And Captain Carter's kind of the main like protagonist in this show, and she's involved in so many different stories, and she becomes like this. It's the equivalent of, I would say, of Cap getting Mjolnir's hammer in Avengers Endgame is like her story arc in this, where she becomes like almost on the same level as the Watchers, in their eyes. And, it's just a really cool way to end this series. And it wrapped up so well that I just can't praise it enough. It's one of my favorite episodes of like animation that I've ever seen.
Yeah, I mean, I enjoyed the last season. I did think it had a few missteps, but there was some fun to it and stuff. And I did like that, because we've joked about it quite a bit since that showed up, is the Watchers referencing Madison with one Y and two N's and stuff, and they bring her back up, and like, oh, Madison is still alive and well. She's in the multiverse. Baby. I love it. Like, they're still talking about Madison. Like, all right, let's go with that. But it was fun. But I will knock the final episode just a little bit, because we learned that kind of the Watchers, they give an oath, and then they bestow the powers upon them. And, we get that Captain Carter and her crew and the Watcher are kind of the other Watchers. They're basically indestructible. You can't harm them. You can't kill them. You can't do anything. And they're blasting them and just about to kill them. So he has them do the oath and gives them the powers. But it was kind of a little bit of hokey. Like, all right, just say this oath and you have all the powers of the universe. They're humans, and some of them are, of course, metahumans and everything else. But it's like, you just have to say a phrase and you become one of the most powerful beings in the universe. Okay. Like, I laughed at that a little bit just because it was so obscene. Okay. You just say the oath, and now you're the most powerful beings around.
What's the problem? I get where you're coming from. I get where you're coming from that for sure. But it made sense in the story, though. Like you said, they tell you that like he becomes a Watcher because he takes the oath and he gets the powers bestowed upon him. So he feels that they are worthy enough of saving that he gives them. Like, this is how you're going to survive this, because they go through like some of the most absurd things to try to get to this place to save their friend, the Watcher. Like maybe they wind up caring about him because that's what heroes do, right? That's what heroes are supposed to do. They're supposed to go above and beyond, run into the burning building when everybody's running away from it, right? So that's kind of their approach to it. And it's just a ton of fun, man. I love these individual stories they take. A couple of them weren't the best. I actually enjoyed the Red Guardian and Winter Soldier episode as well.
I was mixed on that one because it was fun, but it didn't really have a point to it in the end.
It was like a standalone episode. It didn't really have to do anything with the interconnected plot, but I love the fact that most of the Marvel actors lend their voices to this show, and you get David Harbour and Sebastian Stan in that episode, and you get so many of these characters who played them in the movies come back and play them in the show, and that's part of the appeal for it.
So I'll get a little negative with that as well, because when they don't bring the actors back, it stands out because you have so many of the original voices coming back. When they get the sound-alikes and the voice actors to step in, it's very noticeable.
Yeah, and you can only replicate, it just depends on the talent of the voice actor and everything that you have to it. But at the end of the day, I don't think it takes away from the story that much, honestly. Like, I wish you could work those deals. It's harder. I guess it was harder to get some of the big three, if you want to call them the big three. And that the big three being, Scarlett Johansson, Robert Downey Jr., and Chris Evans, like, those were the three most notable ones that aren't.
I don't think they got Mark Ruffalo in there because that was was that Mark?
That was Mark Ruffalo that played the voice.
See, that's the thing.
Hulk.
It did not sound like Mark Ruffalo.
That was Mark Ruffalo.
It sounded like someone sounding like him. So Mark Ruffalo was doing an impersonation of himself.
Yeah, he was doing a voice portrayal of himself. It
didn't sound like him exactly.
I agree, but I had to double check too. I was like, was that him? It actually was him.
Because it wasn't. It sounded like him at times, and other times, like, all right, I can. The voice actor's not nailed. Wait, that's actually. I'm surprised that was actually Mark.
It was legitimately him. Because you had Simu playing Shang-Chi. You had,
I believe Hemsworth returned for Thor.
Hemsworth was Thor. Yes. So you have most of them do come back, and in some cases, it's very noticeable. Like when you get Tony Stark, it's very obviously not Robert Downey Jr. when he does that. Get anything involving Black Widow, it's very clearly not Scarlett Johansson. You can voice match to a point, but it's still somebody else's voice doing it. But yeah, I mean I got a lot of enjoyment out of this. I know you like to poke some holes at it, but like I think they gave us a solid continuation of stories throughout the entire thing that kind of culminated in the way that made sense to me. Like, it's supposed to be a fantastical romp across several different universes and different experiences and presenting these characters in ways we haven't seen it, and that's the whole premise of the show. Like, I think they did a fine job telling that story, and I just got a lot of fun out of it.
Probably the biggest highlight of me for the final season. Like, I've really enjoyed the last two episodes, but it was also, we got Alison Seeley Smith as Storm,
absolutely,
and having her voice and having her in there, and she's. You could have thought, well, she's already got the power of nature. Why does she need Mjolnir? But it made sense, and then how she's got that and able to pull, and it gets her powers with nature even more and stuff. But just her voice, like, we got to talk to her at Cincy Comic Expo, and it was fantastic to be able to talk to her in person about Storm and everything, and have her be able to join the What If and come into this and play Storm. Like, it was just fantastic to hear her. Like, every time she's just got that voice she does, her Storm just gets you like, okay, I'm listening. Like, when she's talking, it's silent and I'm listening.
Yes, Queen, whatever you want. Like, but it was fun because it takes me back to that conversation that we had with her, and she was psyched about this. Like, she was genuinely happy about, like, she's like, if you liked it in '97, you're gonna love me in What If. Like, it was a really cool conversation that we got to have with her, because you could tell how much love she has for playing Storm, and just that booming presence and that just powerful voice that she gives to it. It's absolutely incredible. One of my favorite vocal, like, meshings of character and voice actors I've ever seen. And she just eats. Like, she's so good in this. And you get that, omnipotent power, like, just in her voice, and it's just incredible. And she does such a good job, and good to see her get a little extra love in that too. And I'm just seeing that gets me more excited for the follow-up on X-Men 97 Season 2 when that's coming out for it. But, yeah, just so good. And I love the way all these characters interact and mesh with each other. And I just really enjoyed it, man. I did. At the end of the day, I had a lot of fun with it.
You think the last 2 episodes would have been better if instead of Infinity Ultron, it was Madison who had the power to bring them into the fifth dimension?
So funny. I love Madison. It's like the one positive we could take away from She-Hulk. It was so silly and absurd. I love stuff like that. It really makes me laugh. And just her as a character, just trying to trek around through the multiverses with Wong, just Wongers, like, let's go.
This would have been funny because inside of Infinity Ultron, you get Vision. So he's looking like Vision underneath. So when he took that off, like if it was just Madison instead in the Ultron armor, like, oh, me and Wongers took care of Ultron a long time ago.
Instantly 10 out of 10 if that would have been the case. I would have given it a 10 and it just would have been perfect. But no, it's a ton of fun. Like, I love this show. So in the end, Marvel's What If Season 3 is a lot of fun, in my opinion. You get the culmination of 3 seasons worth of stories that just kind of play around with hypothetical situations involving Marvel characters. If you're into that sort of thing, they do a fine enough job. I think it's written very well. The animation can be hit or miss at times, so that keeps it from giving a perfect score for me. If I were to rate this season alone, a standalone season on a scale of 10, I would probably give it a 7.5, and that's still really solid. Like, it's not perfect. It does have its issues, but what really helps redeem it, in my opinion, is a solid story throughout the entire run. You're going to always have that standoff episode that doesn't really connect to everything, and for my money, that was really the Red Guardian Winter Soldier episode, but it's still a lot of fun, and I love the fact that a majority of the Marvel actors do lend their voices to this, so it kind of helps keep that connected, like, oh, this is, these are these characters that we've seen on screen in the animated realm, and it's just a ton of fun. Like I said, 7.5 out of 10, and it really sits there well for me. I really got a lot of enjoyment out of this.
We're not too far off. I would probably give it a 7 just because I think it did take me out a little bit when the voices just didn't sound like, but it was also the design. Like, sometimes you look at the design of the characters and they looked exactly like who they're supposed to be, and other times it's like, who's that? That's supposed to be them, but it doesn't look like them. Like, they kind of got that wrong. But, and like I said, the Winter Soldier one did stand out to me. Like, I love the Winter Soldier and I love the Red Guardian, but it was kind of just really silly, over the top. That was fun, but it also just kind of didn't have a point in the whole birdie thing. Like the Howard the Duck episode with, Darcy being his wife and trying to connect the universes that way. Because Howard the Duck is one of those polarizing characters. They did the live action movie that was, critically panned as one of the worst films ever made. We got him showing up in Guardians of the Galaxy. You did get Seth Green returning to voice him and everything, but it was kind of one of those weird ones because it showed her being so powerful, but then that didn't really matter in the end, towards the end of the episode, so they didn't really connect it together. But I enjoyed it overall. I think the 7 is a solid for me. Look, it's still good. It had its kind of, for being a final season, I expected a little bit more. Like, you got the final 2 episodes that were great, and I was expecting it to kind of build a little bit more with that being the last one, but everything was kind of left into those last 2 or 3 episodes to really give us our payoff. But, I thought it was solid overall. What would you give What If as a series overall? Like, what did you think of it with everything together now? It's hard to give it an overall totality grade because, like I said, I do feel like this was their best season. I would probably give the overall score a 6.5 to a 7 because it did struggle a little bit out the gate. It was fun, it was connected, but you kind of did. There was a lot of unknown for What If, I guess, a lot of what if for What If, but it struggled a little bit out the gate, but at the same time, there were so many cool, like, individual stories that they tell. You get the zombie episode, which might be one of my favorite overall episodes of the entire series. Which we're getting a standalone
zombie series out of it. You get, like, the whole Captain Carter arc where she becomes, the Captain America in this story, and there's a lot of cool things that they do. It's not perfect by any means. There's some really just kind of blah kind of episodes that are just like, okay, they're fine, they're fun stories, but they don't really hold much consequence. If you're fans of those characters, you'll probably get enjoyment out of it, but it's still a really fun show that I really got a lot of enjoyment about. Like I said, I wish it got to continue a little more because I think there's more stories they could tell if they wanted to. Like they say, infinite possibilities, right? When you're dealing with infinite realities and fun stories they could tell. I get why they're keeping it to just 3 seasons, but I kind of wish they'd give us a little more because there's so much more that they could really explore and do with, especially, God, when you start introducing the X-Men, could you imagine an X-Men what if? Like when they start introducing the Fantastic Four and start really getting those in. Like there's so much meat on the bone that they didn't get to that I wish maybe somewhere down the line they do a reboot of it and just kind of integrate more characters into it. We'll see.
Yeah, I'd probably stick with you with that around a 7 for the entire series. It had some so-so episodes. It had some great episodes. It had some good episodes. I think it did a fair job overall. I would love to see it continue on with the live action. We've talked about it a little bit if we did a live action what if of like, what if Gambit, never got sent to that other realm or something. You get Channing Tatum gets to play Gambit and have his own story. If we wanted to do more with the Fox X-Men, that you could do an episode that has them reprising their roles of being the X-Men. So you could play with the live action verse and bring in, if you give, Andrew Garfield Spider-Man a chance to, go to another multiverse where Emma Stone is Spider-Gwen or something, and you get a different version of that, and he gets to find some happiness or something. Like, you could do a lot of different things using the multiverse and the live action to allow those previous actors to come back and have some fun. Give Wesley Snipes another adventure as Blade and
episode,
that kind of stuff. So, like, Marvel, if you're watching, we'd love to see that. See the live action what if now. Give us a season or 2 of that, of like hour-long, half an hour, hour-long episodes where you get to have them reprise their roles and come back and do something fun.
It would be a lot of fun to have that put together, and it's definitely something I've always wanted to see for sure. But at the end, we got a lot of enjoyment out of this show. It's a ton of fun. If you like hypothetical situations involving characters you already know, it's a great show to watch to kind of just get that enjoyment and take some fun stories in directions that you're not really expecting and you haven't seen yet. It's a fun, interesting take on all these characters you already know. But Marvel's What If is out on Disney Plus. All 3 seasons are available to watch now. If you've watched it, come to our Discord, talk to us about it. Let us know what your favorite episodes were. What were some episodes that they didn't get to that you would have liked to see? And what are some of your what if possibilities that you'd love to see if they were to continue it down the line? Let us know. We'd love to hear from you.
And if you'd like to see that live action like we would, to come up, tell us your ideas that you have too. And maybe through the internet we'll get Marvel to kind of go with that. But especially with how they're obsessed with Channing Tatum's Gambit now, from what we're hearing, that would be a perfect way to have him come back. Even you could still have him come back in either Doomsday or Secret Wars or something else like that, but you could give him his own adventure.
I can imagine if you get to Secret Wars and they have all the characters that are rumored to be in there, and at some point Gambit comes in and just starts taking people out at some point, the roar in that theater is going to be thunderous. It's going to be so fun. I can't wait for Secret Wars. It's going to be such a fun movie.
Before we head into wrapping up the episode here, we wanted to give a big thanks out to Hollie and Wayne Gillespie for the table here. You might have noticed that we have a new table that we're using. We were using a folding table before, just keeping as cheap as we could doing this, but we got a nice solid table to use for the podcast now. We can't thank them enough. We want you to go over and show some love to Hollie. They have the HUDIE Hut-N-Stuff. So this is a concession truck. She also does a bunch of crafts and everything else you can hire for birthday parties, or if you have ball games going on at parks in the Northern Kentucky area. You can give them a call and set them up to handle all your food and drinks for the birthday parties, for all that stuff. We're going to put a link in the description to it. We love, even if you're not in the area, go to her Facebook page, give it a like, let her know that we sent you, show some love. She started this business last year with her mom, and unfortunately she lost her mom to brain cancer and stuff. So it's been a really tough time and a hard time. She's trying to push through and move on, keeping this business that they started together going. So we would love if you could just go send them some love, give the page a like, and if you're in the Northern Kentucky, Cincinnati area, hire them for your events and stuff. And they're some great people, and we really want to show some love to them, and a big thanks again for what they did for us.
Yeah, friends of the podcast, great people, incredibly nice people, incredibly giving people. Go show them some support, give them a little bit of love as well, and thank you again for this table. It's awesome. We really appreciate it. Thank you.
So what's coming up this week? So we have a couple interesting films coming out in theaters. So we have Companion, which I do kind of feel they shouldn't have done that second trailer. The first trailer gave you some mystery because you're seeing Jack Quaid's character is sitting with a woman and she's got tears in her eyes and you're getting like she's being tortured and hurt and you've got a lot of mystery, and that second trailer kind of took away all the mystery. It basically revealed almost every kind of twist we think this movie. We're still going to go see it,
Of course.
and we're looking forward to it. But if it's one of those instances where I feel like they should have really stopped where they were because that second trailer just gave way too much.
Yeah, I agree with that, but at the same time, I think they're saving some stuff. Hopefully, that's the optimist in me, that they're saving some stuff in this. But yeah, I'm excited to go check that film out, give it a review, and I know that's one we're going to be talking about next week for sure.
Yeah, we also have Dogman, which is an adaptation of the graphic novel that my kids really love. They're looking forward to seeing that, so I'm going to be taking them to check that film out. I'm going to be out of town when that comes out, so I might end up having to see that a little bit later with the kids when it comes out, but it could be fun. I've read a little bit of the graphic novels with them. They've gone through basically every single one of them, so I'm interested to see how that translates into an animated film on the big screen.
Yeah, it's going to be a ton of fun. A big family film coming out. That the trailers for the film look just fun. Like it's just going to be a good time and very smartly written, which I'm excited for. And I'm excited to check that out too.
So on demand, we have quite a decent mix of films. So the first one up is Baby Girl. That's a Nicole Kidman, that romance affair thriller where she, has an intern that ends up, getting her to do whatever he wants her to do and stuff. That was kind of another snub. Like, I don't think she got a nomination for that, even though a lot of people were talking about her performance in it. So you've got that coming out on demand along with The Fire Inside on January 28th. So that's about the gold medalist boxer that looked really good. We didn't get a chance to go see it in theater, so I'm looking forward to checking out both of those. We also have Sing Sing. So this actually just had a re-release in theaters, but it had a kind of a smaller release. So this is about like a theater. It follows prisoners, and it's about a theater program in a prison that actually has had it's based off of a true story. So it has had a very successful rates of not having like repeat offenders and having them come back to jail. And it's based off of that true story. And it even has some actual prisoners, former prisoners as part of the cast in it. So I'm looking forward to checking that one out when it drops on demand on January 31st.
Yeah, that was a film that I've really wanted to check out. It's gotten a lot of high praise for it. I'm excited to see that one. It seems like one of those good, like, just kind of makes you feel better after seeing it. It's like a feel good movie that I'm excited to really check out and see, because you love hearing stuff about that, about people that don't just prison gets, obviously if you go to prison you've done probably something very terrible or something unfortunate, but the fact that something like this exists to help give people a chance to rehabilitate themselves and kind of give them a second chance to have a second chance at life, and you love to see something like that. I'm excited to see this film when it finally drops on demand for sure.
Yeah, over on the TV side, we have Paradise Season 1 on Hulu dropping on January 28th. So this has got Sterling K. Brown and James Marsden in. So it kind of takes place in this big, rich community. So it's just this, you have the elite all living together, but then a murder happens and it sends shockwaves to the community because this is something that shouldn't happen because they're all the elite. And it's got some good buzz heading into it as kind of one of the most anticipated shows of the season, of the year coming in. So that one will be interesting to check out, and one that we're really looking forward to. We finally have Your Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man dropping on Disney Plus on January 29th. So we did get the release schedule for the episode. So they are doing it in a different way, because most of the streaming, you either have it in two ways. You have episode by episode, or you might have a 2-episode premiere, then they go episode by episode, then you may have a 1 or 2 episode finale. This is breaking it up in like 3 different chunks. You're getting all 10 episodes in 4 weeks.
Yeah,
because they're breaking it up in chunks. So you get the first 2 episodes, then you get like 3 episodes, and you get like 4 episodes, and it's really interesting how they're doing the kind of chunked drop of that show.
Yeah, it's a different way of releasing it. It's going to be interesting to see it. I'm excited to get our eyes on it. The animation style looks really cool on it. I'm excited to see that. It did get leaked that Charlie Cox is playing his role of Matt Murdock in the show, and what capacity that's going to be. There's an episode that at least by the title, seems very Daredevil centric. So that could be like the one episode that he's in. But I'm excited to get our eyes on that and have a chance to review it and talk about it for sure.
You have a feeling that drop schedules, because even though you're going to have very similar audiences for it, but you have Daredevil Born Again dropping at the beginning of March, and this is dropping at the end of January and airing through February. So they're probably wanting to make sure they don't overlap, even though you got a TVMA and this is a TV PG, TV 14 animated series. They still probably don't want to have two of their own properties overlapping each other.
Yeah, and it's smart on their part, so we're excited to get our eyes on it for sure.
Yep.
So that's going to do it for this week's episode. We can't thank you enough again for your continued support. Thanks again to Hollie and Wayne for this awesome table. We really appreciate it. Go check them out, HUDIE Hut-N-Stuff on Facebook, and give them a like to let them know that we sent you. Coming up next week, we are going to be reviewing the film Companion, as well as Your Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man episodes 1 and 2 that are dropping this week on Disney+. Can't wait to talk about that. Until next week, I'm Josh, he's Brad, and we'll see you next time.